Hi, and welcome to another episode of Real Estate with Howard Drukarsh. For those that don't know me, I'm one of the co-founders, along with Arthur Bartram and Ron Petticord, of the largest independent real estate brokerage in Canada with over 5,300 salespeople. In my career, I've also been on the board of directors of the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, on the board of directors of the Real Estate Council of Ontario, that's also known as RECO, and I sit on the board of the company I co-founded. If you want to know more about me, there's also a podcast. It's called Intro. It's the first podcast we did. It's an audio only, and I talk about my own journey through real estate, through my early years in life, and things that I overcame, and the successes I've had, the failures I've had, all of that. And I think you might find that interesting. This is not going to be your typical real estate podcast because even though we're interviewing a variety of people, which include real estate agents, brokers, people in the construction business, whether they're developers, people marketing new construction, finance people, lawyers, interesting people, media people. The whole idea of the podcast is to speak to people and find out about their journey, how they overcame setbacks, roadblocks, failures, rejection, and they kept that trajectory going straight up until they were successful. And to me, that's a really, really interesting story. My own real estate story is once we started this company, I'd never managed, but as we grew, we needed a manager. So I would manage as we opened new branches. And then for a few years, I was also involved as president and broker of record. One of the most important things in a real estate brokerage is the salespeople. I was involved in the interviewing and hiring of salespeople. And over the time that I was active in this company, I'd hired over 1,000 people. What I found fascinating is after a while, I could tell when I met a new person, not exactly, but if they had enthusiasm, if there was a spark, I knew they would do really well. And then there were people transferring from other brands. People came from brands that had been around a lot longer than we were. And that was really flattering because they saw the value in our model. And so my experience in the real estate brokerage world was very, very positive. And the company is an extremely successful company now. Enough about me. Now to my guest, Rhys Trenhaile. Let me tell you a bit about how I met Rhys. We were sitting beside each other in this professional designation course. And, you say hi and where are you from? And he's from Windsor. And my wife, Rosemary's from Windsor. So we automatically kind of struck it up in terms of talking. And I really hadn't, a little bit of, social media connection, but I really hadn't spoken to Rhys for a while. And I thought, what a wonderful guest he would be because he's had such a fascinating career, which we'll tell you about. And then I reconnected with him a short while ago, and I asked if he ever finished the course. He said he got too busy. I got too busy. So that's it for that course for now. So let me introduce you now to Rhys Trenhaile. Rhys, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you.
Listen, I know you have had a really wonderful background. So let's talk about the things that interest me and I think will interest our viewers. Let's start with your career, starting out as a lawyer. Tell us about that.
I never actually ended up practicing law, but I ran track and field and cross country at the University of Windsor. And your undergrad is 4 years, but you get 5 years of eligibility to run for the team. And at the time, we were one of the top teams, not only in Canada, but North America. So you want to get your 5th year in. Okay. And my dad is a recently retired university prof at the University of Windsor. And if you would have listened in on the decision-making process, you would think an academic would be talking about, academia, but it was all about, okay, well, you got to get your 5th year on the team. What are you going to do? You're going to do, like a teaching, a teaching degree. And I was like, I don't want to be a teacher, How about business? I said, well, I'm already running businesses, I don't really want to do an MBA. How about law? And I was like, you know what? Law school, a law degree is one of the most it probably is the most flexible degree you can get as far as the different things you can do with it in life and in society. I was like, okay, I'll do that, and I loved it. But I knew through the whole process, I wasn't necessarily going to end up being a lawyer. And I think the University of Windsor Law School is one of the few law schools that knows that 50% of law school graduates are not practicing law within 5 years of graduation.
Interesting.
They're going into all kinds of different things, using the law degree every day, but going into all kinds of, so they almost, they make sure that you know that it's not wrong to think of doing other things. And for me, I fell into real estate sales, which is, I don't think what they really meant. Yeah. But there's a prominent criminal lawyer in town. And when I told him of my decision to go into real estate sales, he paused very briefly and he said, "You will use that law degree every day." Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, that's a very nice thing to say. I'm thinking in my head, very nice thing to say, but I don't think you're right. Oh, he was right. I use that sucker every day, that education.
Great. So after law, I know that you also got into commercial development in the city of Windsor. I know you're also an investor in the city. How did that come about?
The investment actually preceded even the law degree. When I was running track at the university, I was a middle distance runner. I like to say I was a middle distance runner 52 pounds ago.
You sent me that. You sent me that in the email. You told me. Wait a second, Rhys. In the email, you said 40 pounds ago.
What is it right now? I was 161 pounds at my racing weight, and I'm 212 now. So whatever that is.
Whatever. Right.
I don't want to do the math. 39 plus 51.
Right. Okay.
There you go.
That's really, that was something our viewers really wanted to know.
Write that one down. Yeah. So there was one guy on the team that bought a income property, bought a student rental property. Mm-hmm. And when you're on these long runs for 60 minutes at a time, day after day with these guys, you're talking about everything. So now we're picking his brain on how he did it. And he was basically following in his dad's footsteps. And by the time we won a national championship back in 1998, we owned, it's a team of 7 guys. We owned 7 student rental properties between us and the ass end of a couple of racehorses at the Windsor Raceway.
WR.
Oh, yeah. So I said, boys, I don't know if we're the best team to ever win a national title, but we're definitely the wealthiest.
Good for you. Listen, I love Windsor. My wife Rosemary's from Windsor, and after I met her, we would periodically be driving down to Windsor. And like when you said Windsor Raceway, around town it was known as WR, as I recall. And there were so many things I really enjoyed about Windsor. Anyway, the thing about, we'll get into that a little bit later. So your role now, and you're also an investor, right? You're an investor in property, commercial property in the city. Tell me what you think about where Windsor's at. You know this as well as any agent in Windsor. There's all kinds of Toronto agents, going to Windsor with clients, trying to find, I'm not sure it's all investment, but trying to find properties less expensive in the GTA, right? Mm-hmm. So how does that play into the commercial field? Do you find investors coming from the GTA as well?
Yeah, so, it's never stopped for us. So when I got into real estate sales, I did a SWOT analysis and an environmental assessment of the real estate industry before I knew what a SWOT analysis and an environmental assessment were.
Yeah.
And I concluded, and this will be foreign to people in Toronto, but when you get into a mid-sized city that is a long distance away from a financial center like Toronto, you'll find that the niches in business that are available to get into, exploit, and make a profit are countless. Mm. There's just not enough people of what I would call the creative class to fill all those spots. And so when I got into real estate sales, I did this assessment, and this is where it's going to sound foreign to real estate agents from Toronto. 17 years ago when I started, there was nobody specializing in income property sales in a city of 330,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah, so forget about the niches within the category of income property sales. There was nobody saying, I'm the income property guy. And at the time, I owned 3 student rental properties coming out of university. And so I went, I'm the income property guy.
With a law degree.
Of course, everything went like gangbusters because nobody else was saying that. And I had to start hiring people and figuring out how to build a team just to keep up. Mm-hmm. And even to this day, 70% of we do over 200 sales a year and growing. And 70% of those sales Our income property sales, 30% are just pure residential. Out of those income property sales, which is about 140 roughly, 150 a year, 90% of those are to investors from the GTA, but they were even 17 years ago, not just now that it's a red hot market. Yeah, that's always been a huge bulk of our personal business.
So talking about Windsor, and as I said, I know it because of my wife and family, and I'd be a visitor to Windsor often. And we got married a long time ago when the Tunnel Barbecue was still in existence.
Yeah, oh man.
Right? Yeah. Oh man was everybody. And then here's the thing about Rhys and myself. The only way that we were going to get together is if he invited me to Capri Pizza.
Yeah. Yes,
because I think that could be at least in this Southern Ontario could be the most popular pizza. Lovely, great pizza place, right? Everybody loves it. So
yes,
so that's a little bit of my experience. But talk about Windsor the way you see it, because there's still some legacy feelings about Windsor that aren't necessarily the way it is today. Correct?
Sure. I think, in fairness, so there is a stigma. There's a stigma that goes back 100 years ago. That is specifically, and it's very interesting from the outside looking in, but I hate to say this, but it's like all GTA. So when you're selling income properties going back 17 years ago, and you're getting these inquiries from 647 area code 905 416, we had to treat those differently than inquiries from the rest of Canada and from Windsor, because we knew that there was this misperception that RoboCop and the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse were going down Main Street in every house you could buy for $1. It was just like, where are they getting this from? And I found out later from historians at the University of Windsor that it's actually a stigma that goes back to Prohibition almost exactly 100 years ago. And it was not helped along the way by the very development of militant unions, which basically started in Windsor back in the 40s. And then after that, in the 60s and 70s, it was more of a sort of, by that point, a flourishing but very dirty car town, very dirty factory town. Well, it's not polluted anymore. The unions aren't militant anymore. Last time I checked, Prohibition's not happening anymore. And, you've got a city that has all the wonderful things of living in a mid-sized city: low crime, no traffic jams. We are the southernmost city, and because we're on the other side of the jet stream, our weather is 5 degrees Celsius warmer on average than Toronto, which means you get an extra 6 weeks of summer every year. We have the highest net disposable incomes in Canada. Like, so after you've paid for your house and you've paid for your car and you've paid for the Cheerios for your kids, we have the most amount of money per family left over to spend on vacations. And in our case, because we're surrounded by water, on boats. This is the most boats per capita in Canada down here. So it's this super awesome life. Oh, and I haven't even gotten into the fact that we live right on the border with Detroit. And so you get all this awesome stuff living in Canada and living in this mid-sized city that's flourishing. But then you've got all the American amenities right out, like literally 2 kilometers this way. Right now, that's Detroit.
Yeah. My wife,
downtown Detroit is 3 kilometers that way. Yeah. If I could grab my webcam, I could spin it around and show you the Renaissance Center right outside my office window.
I mean, I remember there's Greektown, there's the Silverdome. Was that the one?
Yeah, well, they're not at the Silverdome anymore. They moved to downtown Detroit. They're at Ford Field now, the Detroit Lions.
And what's the baseball field?
Comerica Park.
Right, another huge success.
It's beautiful.
Right.
Oh, it's one of the most beautiful parks I've ever been to for baseball.
The closeness to Detroit, for me, there's a story with my wife where when she was younger, she was in the Detroit Youth Orchestra, and she would just get on the bus and go across, for practices and come back. I mean, it was so easy in those days, right?
Yeah,
so,
it's gotten hard. So 9/11 really changed that.
Right.
But then they kind of made up for it with the Nexus Pass.
Yeah, we have
as long as you've got a Nexus Pass, there's no fear at the border. There's lines that you just literally, they look at you and ask like a quick question to make sure that you match the Nexus card and you go through. You're already pre-cleared, in other words.
Right. It's a great way to get through any of the customs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So no, it has been a real sort of frustration through the pandemic because we haven't been able to go over there for a year.
Mm.
And it's hard to explain to people that aren't from Windsor, but your mentality is hyphenated. It's Windsor, Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
The Detroit Lions are my football team. Don't hold, I know. It's like being a fan of the Maple Leafs, man. It is a tough existence.
Okay.
But yeah, the Lions, the Pistons, the
Yeah.
Tigers, they're all your teams. Like, you have tons of friends over there. My wife's American. I met her when she was going to the University of Michigan for a PhD. And yeah, smart enough for a PhD, dumb enough to marry me. That's the family slogan. But there's a lot of cross-border interaction and marriage and friendship and camaraderie, and it's been cut off for a year now because of the pandemic. So that has really sucked.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, like literally, there's two-star Michelin restaurants from where I sit right now, a 15-minute drive to Valet, and they're not sort of New York or Toronto prices. I mean, it's like 2-star for 2 people for $150 American with the tip.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't wait till we can do that stuff again. Like, downtown Detroit is not 1980s downtown Detroit. It is flourishing. It's a phoenix that has risen from the ashes, and it's so much fun. And their downtown core, their crime rates are 34% less than the American average now.
Wow, big change.
In Detroit proper. Yeah, people don't realize unless, again, you're down here.
Yeah. Let me ask this. The other part of your career, besides real estate, besides law, was you're also a professional actor, or have been, correct?
Yes. Absolutely.
And you called me once about this. We're talking about, you're well known for that, right?
Sure.
But you want to make sure you're well known for real estate. And I remember I heard this expression. I thought it was the best expression. I said, why don't you just call it your side hustle? Remember that conversation?
Yeah.
So what?
I've learned a lot about branding since then.
Yeah.
And so what you'll find is a lot of your brand these days is social media. Mm-hmm. So you'll notice that I think you and I are personal Facebook friends, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, we are, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what you'll notice on my personal Facebook page, which is heavily Windsor centric because I'm born and raised here, you'll find that there's more of a narrative of real estate, less, 80-20.
Yeah.
So 80% of it is, family photos, et cetera, and I'll kind of tie in the real estate stuff. And then I talk about the acting much less.
Yeah.
But then if you go to my acting Facebook page, I have about 1 million followers worldwide.
Wow.
But I don't promote it in Windsor.
Makes sense.
And that way it helps me to make that distinction. And then you've seen my running joke, I think, which is like today, I just posted something on Facebook, and I've got a hashtag, and it's all capital letters. I still sell real estate.
Right.
Because what was happening is I start showing up as a recurring role on like Designated Survivor. Then everybody thinks you're making $1 million an episode and living in Hollywood locally, right? And so agents would take advantage of that. And of course, that's not, it's against their code of ethics, but hey, what's the code of ethics, right? And they would go into listing appointments and go, oh, yeah, I think Rhys lives in Hollywood now. I don't think he's selling real estate anymore. So I had to start that. I still sell real estate, and that has become a big running joke locally in Windsor. And I get people in person all the time that just, hey, do you still sell real estate? They think it's funny, and I don't tell them that everybody says that same joke, but it's great.
Well, it's the problem opportunity, right? You had a problem, you made it into a great opportunity to help promote yourself, right? I mean,
and at the end of the day, for sales, being top of mind is the most important thing, right?
Right.
The average person knows, I think, 3 real estate agents. Why are they going to choose you? And so if you're top of mind, even if it's not related to real estate, you're the one that they're going to go to first.
Well, in Toronto, the average person has 3 real estate agents in their family.
That's why I hesitated, because I know the per capita is like ridiculous for agents up there. It's crazy.
Right. I knew you were pulling back on that one, so I thought I'd say it for you.
Yeah, you noticed. Right. Yeah.
So let me ask about your background, because I always find that's a really interesting question. You mentioned your dad was a professor, right?
Yep.
What were the influences of your parents on your career?
I'm the black sheep of the family, Howard. Sales and business are not traditional in my family at all. They're almost, going back 3 generations now, they're almost all engineers, teachers, professors. And they've done wonderful things. My great uncle Will was one of the 27 scientists that developed radar during World War II.
Wow.
And my grandpa Jack played rugby for Swansea, which is like saying your grandpa played basketball for the Boston Celtics. So both sides of the family have wonderful people, but as far as business, it's just never been a thing in our family, entrepreneurialism. And but what my parents did give me is a base of knowledge and a burning curiosity. And the curiosity is what fuels my passion for the things that I do. Like, I got into acting not because, I want to be famous one day. I got into acting because I'm like, man, how does that work? I was done with sports. I was 34, 35. I was done with sports. I was getting too old for sports to be any good anymore. And I needed a new outlet for my sort of my passions and my curiosities. And that's where it went that way, because one of my best friends confided in me and said he always wanted to be an actor. So I helped him get into an acting class. He disappeared after one class in Detroit. And they're calling me up going, are you coming back? I'm like, I did this for my buddy. I don't even know where he is. But I was like, I had fun. I'll go back. And then, they ended up press ganging me into a theater production that they were doing in Detroit's downtown theater district. So all of a sudden I'm acting in front of like hundreds and hundreds of people within like 2 months of me saying, I'll come back for second class. And I got hooked, man. It was a lot of fun. It was a great group to learn with. And a couple of them are still acting years and years later out in LA. It's been good, man. It's been good.
Good for you. Listen, one of the questions that I like to ask people, because when I was asked the question, I was like, wow, good question. What would you tell your 20-year-old self if you could do that now?
Oh, man. My 20-year-old self, what would I tell them? Yeah. I would give them a list in order of books to read. Because there are books along the way that have been, but see, at 20, are you going to use those books properly? Do you know what I mean?
It's your answer, Rhys.
Yeah, that is a really good question, Howard. I would give him a list of books.
Right.
And say, don't read the second one on the list until you've mastered the first one and implemented it fully into your life. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. Also, this is kind of personal, but I think these are important things to define people. What's the worst thing that happened to you in your life?
I mean, the loss of my grandparents.
Okay. And what's the best thing that happened to you in your life?
The best thing that's happened to me in my life, I mean, basically it's being born at all is a miracle. But then being born into Canada and then being born into a family like mine where you're not born into wealth, you're born into a wealth of knowledge. It's winning the lottery, man. I won the lottery the day I was born.
I'll tell you, that's great answers. So many people don't have that answer. So good for you.
Yeah.
I've asked, and you've given me all the information I was hoping we'd be able to share today. So I know you're a busy guy because I just went over all the things you do. So I want to say
it's fun. The variation in the day is fun.
Yeah.
Between the two professions. I basically, and I thank Toronto completely for this. So I couldn't act without Toronto, number one, because it's become the second largest center for the industry outside of Hollywood. So I couldn't do that without Toronto. And then quite frankly, Toronto and Toronto people are the ones that have taught me and guided me and mentored me on private equity. And without that, I wouldn't be able to do the developments that I'm doing in Windsor. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be able to do the business side of things that I do now in the media industry increasingly. It just wouldn't happen without that city. And yeah, grateful that it's right up the road for sure.
Okay. So I want to thank you, and we're going to have to, I guess, delay the chance for you to buy me a pizza.
You're welcome down here anytime.
Okay.
It's funny you say Capri.
Right.
We never talked about how Windsor is one of the food hubs in North America, never mind Canada.
Okay.
You want good, simple food, from peasants from all over the world.
Yeah.
This is where you come. That's the pizza. It's the shawarma. No disrespect to Toronto. I ended up getting a wonderful film role. I walked out the door. I was so happy. I'm strutting down, I think it was College Avenue. I see the shawarma shop. I'm like, I'm going to get a shawarma. I go strutting in there. I'm so happy. My chest is puffed out. I get that shawarma. I get outside. I'm still strutting. I unwrap this shawarma. Then I took one bite. And Howard, I rarely do this. I dropped it in the garbage. It's Toronto is awesome for a lot of ethnic foods, man, but you don't have our shawarma, man.
Right. Well,
you kill us on Thai food. Your Thai food's amazing. You might have the best Thai food out of Thailand.
Okay.
In Toronto.
Well, listen, we could go through all the different cultures in Toronto.
Oh man,
but I think
there are some awesome restaurants in Toronto. I'm not knocking Toronto food at all.
Right.
It's the other sort of multi-ethnic hub of food.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the thing. I don't know anybody that loves Windsor more than you do. So when you become mayor, when you monetize all your buildings, and you are flying back and forth from Hollywood, let's pick it up again for another podcast. Okay.
I'd be more than happy to come on, man.
All right. Really nice to see you. Congratulations on your recent wedding. And we'll stay in touch, Rhys. Really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Thanks a lot, Howard.
Okay. Bye-bye. Hi, we want to thank Rhys Trenhaile for being our guest today, and we want to thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the podcast, and if you did, please like us, comment, and also subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach us either by email, which is info@rewithhd.com, or on the web at rewithhd.com. Take care, be kind to each other, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.